Good evening. Scott's off tonight. I'm Jim Axelrod. The first hurricane ever recorded striking the U.S. on the 4th of July is bearing down on the Massachusetts coast. Right now, Arthur is approaching Cape Cod, having stayed far enough at sea to miss most of the Atlantic states on its trip north. When it hit North Carolina overnight, it became the first Category 2 hurricane to make landfall in the U.S. in nearly 6 years, though it didn't cause as much damage as was initially feared there. This is another look at Arthur taken by an astronaut in the International Space Station. Even though it is weakened, Arthur is drowning out 4th of July plans across New England. We have 2 storm watchers covering this hurricane, beginning with Eric Fisher, chief meteorologist at our Boston station WBZ. So, Eric, what exactly is Arthur up to right now, and where is it headed?
All right, well, Jim, good evening. Basically, Arthur, at this point, is a rain event for a lot of folks in New England. I want you to soak in this satellite and radar picture. That's something you will almost never see on the 4th of July, a hurricane right off the coast of New England this far to the north. Latest stats on Arthur, it's a Category 1 storm, 80-mile-per-hour winds. It has been weakening in terms of a wind perspective throughout the day today, but still packing a wallop when it comes to the rain. It will come very close to Nantucket just a few hours from now. Working just off to the south and east, will still be a Category 1 storm. It will weaken as it heads up toward the Canadian Maritime, but bringing a lot of wind and a lot of rain late tonight and into tomorrow morning. In terms of winds here in the United States, we will see tropical storm force winds for Cape Cod and the islands. We're not expecting a lot of damage from wind. This is a rain and flood event. We've been seeing prodigious amounts of rainfall. Latest check, some parts of the south coast of Massachusetts are up around 8 inches with a flash flood emergency this evening. Many motorists stranded in that water, and the winds are starting to pick up as well. Its closest pass will be to Nantucket. Right now, winds are gusting around 30. They should gust to tropical storm force later on tonight, but the storm will be long gone by the time people wake up tomorrow morning. Jim?
Eric, thank you. This is the earliest in the season a hurricane has ever made landfall in North Carolina, where tens of thousands are still without power after Arthur moved through the Outer Banks. But as Craig Boswell tells us, given the forecast, they're actually feeling lucky in North Carolina.
Arthur made landfall late last night near the southern tip of the Outer Banks, bringing pelting rain and wind speeds of 100 miles per hour. Some roads were flooded. More than 40,000 in the state lost power. But by early light, North Carolina officials were breathing a collective sigh of relief. There were no casualties or serious injuries reported, and most of the damage was minor. In Nags Head, after the Roanoke Sound rose 4 feet around his restaurant, owner Brian Wilson raced to open in time for dinner.
Yesterday was supposed to be our busiest day of the entire season, and we had nothing even close to that.
Many area beaches were open for the holiday, though Governor Pat McCrory warned of dangerous riptides.
We do want people to enjoy the beach, but if the local authorities say don't get in the water, don't get in the water, and we mean it.
Horrible mess, horrible mess.
76-year-old Virginia Colson spent today doing mop-up duty after a sleepless night.
I sat here about 4 o'clock this morning and watched shingles out my bedroom window flying off the roof, and I'm even afraid to go up there and look to see how much damage is done up there.
And cities up and down the East Coast were forced to alter their 4th of July celebrations in the wake of Hurricane Arthur. And Jim, here in the Outer Banks, fireworks displays will take place throughout the weekend.
So help me God. Congratulations.
To these 25 men and women, service members and spouses, it is an honor to join everyone here for the first time in calling you our fellow Americans. Together, all of you remind us that America is and always has been a nation of immigrants. Throughout our history, immigrants have come to our shores in wave after wave from every corner of the globe. Every one of us, unless we're Native American, has an ancestor who was born somewhere else. The basic idea of welcoming immigrants to our shores is central to our way of life. It is in our DNA. We believe our diversity, our differences, when joined together by a common set of ideals, makes us stronger. And that's why, if we want to keep attracting the best and the brightest from beyond our shores, we're going to have to fix our immigration system, which is broken, and pass common sense immigration reform. Thank you, everybody. Happy 4th of July. All right.
A hiker is lucky to be alive after getting stuck on a cliff in Washington state this week. When rescuers arrived, he was clinging to rocks 100 feet above the ground in Snoqualmie Pass. A helicopter hovered dangerously close to the rocks. As a rescuer was lowered on a hoist, he then fastened the hiker to his harness, and the helicopter carried them both to safety. Tonight, protesters are gathered outside a Border Patrol facility in Murrieta, California, waiting for the expected arrival of busloads of illegal immigrants. They're being transported from Texas, where facilities have been overwhelmed by a surge in illegal immigration. But many in Murrieta don't want them. John Blackstone is there.
The flag waving at the Border Patrol station in Murrieta began overnight, more in protest than in celebration.
Shut down the border!
This time, both sides in the immigration debate were present and noisy. For Jackie Nemechek, the flood of undocumented immigrants is a threat to America's future.
We don't want any more because we're kind of overwhelmed. The cup is full, and it's about time Americans took back their country.
Many of those on the buses that were blocked here on Tuesday made the same journey Jose Maldonado made 1 year ago. At age 17, he was fleeing crime and violence in Honduras. His grandparents, who had raised him, died, and he was being pressed to join a gang.
He was calling us because he was scared of being over there.
His aunt, Alejandra Maldonado, who was born in California, wanted to adopt him and move him here legally.
He couldn't wait. He got impatient because he was really scared.
You paid $7,000, but then you were abandoned before you reached the border. I was abandoned by the smugglers in the desert, he says. We had to figure out a way to reach our destination. And then you get to the river? And what did you think when you got to the river? I had to make it, he says, even knowing that something could happen to me. In Texas, he was held for a month by immigration authorities before being allowed to join his aunt.
I went to get him at the airport, and he saw me, and the tears came out of both of our eyes because it was like, okay, you're home now.
Jose Maldonado has already made one appearance before an immigration judge. He has another scheduled for January. Here at the Border Patrol station today, extensive security arrangements have been made here, but so far no buses have arrived here, Jim.
John, can you tell me a little bit more about what exactly has been done to avoid a repeat of the situation where those buses were turned away like we saw Tuesday?
The police here have blocked the road in one direction. There's a far bigger police presence, and the Border Patrol is actually out here on the street today as well. They have kept the road open in the other direction, and just a few minutes ago we saw several police cars race down that road. We don't know whether perhaps buses are arriving or whether someone's made an attempt to block that road, but they're trying to keep the road in the other direction completely open, so if a bus does come, it can come and get into this station.
John Blackstone in Murrieta. Thank you, John.
The Pentagon has halted all flights of its F-35 fighter jets. Now, these planes are grounded while investigators determine how one caught fire as it was taking off from the Elgin Air Force Base last month. This is the latest setback for the Lockheed Martin-built fighter. A mid-flight oil leak on one of the planes triggered another fleet-wide inspection in June. At $398 billion, the F-35 is the Pentagon's most expensive weapons program ever.
Frantic call for help. The mother and son plummeting into a sinkhole, trapped in their car. Alex Perez outside Chicago tonight.
It happened in seconds. Before Juanita Pineda and her 15-year-old son Benjamin could react, the road swallowing their car with them in it. You can hear the panic as she frantically dialed 911.
Hello? Yes, please help!
Juanita and Benjamin were out delivering newspapers just before 4 a.m. Tuesday, driving down a dark road in rural Illinois. When their Ford Taurus tumbled into the broad sinkhole, the road had given way after epic rains in June, double the average for the region. Mother and son were trapped. Benjamin was hurt. Then a bad situation got worse. A pickup truck literally drives over them.
Oh my God, Mom! Another car!
Okay, what
happened? I don't know. I just left.
That pickup driver turns around.
No. Yes, you did went over me. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Are you okay? My son. I need help. My son, please.
With Benjamin injured and bleeding, patience quickly grows thin.
It felt like an hour, 2-hour wait, 3-hour wait. It felt like an eternity.
Benjamin has fractured ribs and cuts all over his body, but is expected to make a full recovery. For his mom, he says,
It hurts so much, I'll stay strong.
You told her even though it hurts so much, you're going to stay strong for her.
Yeah.
Mother and son grateful to be alive after surviving a nightmare.
Millions of Americans are celebrating the 4th of July tonight around the barbecue. But the cost of the burger or steak they're throwing on the grill has spiked since last year's party. Beef prices have gone from $4.88 a pound last year to $5.45 this year. So we asked Dean Reynolds to find out why.
If you have a beef with the rising price of meat, a trip to the LJ Ranch in Logan, Kansas may be instructive.
We have the lowest amount of cow numbers since 1952, and so our cow numbers are down drastically.
Down drastically, says rancher Lloyd Schneider, because of a combination of factors, beginning with the grass.
When the drought hits us, our grass does not grow to the extent that we are accustomed to.
Calves don't mature as fast on drought-stricken pasture land, and the prolonged winter slowed the growth of grain to fatten them up. But there's another reason for the lack of domestic beef.
We are also exporting more to other countries, and so the demand for beef is stronger.
The USDA is projecting retail prices for beef will rise as high as 6.5% this year, compared to just 2% last year. The Northwest Meat Company in Chicago is on the supply end of the equation, providing meat to local hotels, restaurants, and country clubs. But finding meat from producers isn't as easy as it once was.
10-ounce burgers.
Andrew Neva is a third-generation packer.
Like today, I ordered 12 boxes of whole beef tenderloins. I got 6 because they don't have the supply.
So he pays more to get what he needs, on average 10 to 15% more, and some of that has to be passed along to his customers, who then pass it along to theirs, and on until the steak hits your table. And that is something to chew on.
What was Justin Ross Harris allegedly doing while his 22-month-old son, Cooper, suffered in the back of this scorching SUV?
He was having up to 6 different conversations with different women. The most common term would be sexting.
Stunning claims of raunchy text messages, suspicious internet searches, and a plan to kill his son.
Evidence is showing us right now that he's got this whole second life that he's living with alternate personalities and alternate personas.
Harris sat shackled and sullen as Detective Phil Stoddard with the Cobb County Police Department detailed X-rated messages allegedly exchanged the day Cooper died, including with a then 16-year-old girl.
Were photos being sent back and forth between these women and the defendant during this day while the child's out in the car?
Yes, there were photos of his exposed penis, erect penis being sent. There were also photos of women's breasts being sent back to him.
No visible reaction from the 33-year-old's wife, Leanna Harris, who sat with her family and supporters in the packed courtroom.
He was a loving father. He loved his son very much. We went on family vacations together, and he was a good dad.
But just 5 days before Cooper's death, Detective Stoddard says internet searches revealed that Harris watched videos online about the dangers of being trapped in a hot car, and that Harris visited a web forum devoted to the child-free lifestyle.
So you don't have any evidence that he actually typed in a Google search or a Reddit search or anything for child-free.
True.
We're getting so far afield from the events of June the 18th. This has got nothing to do with those events whatsoever. The status of his marriage and his fantasy life has got nothing to do with the events of June the 18th. We're just getting so far afield, Judge. This isn't relevant to anything.
Judge, this goes to his state of mind in the 2 weeks leading up to the death of this child.
So this occurred within 2 weeks?
Yes, Your Honor.
Overrule the objection.
The detective also testified the couple had financial problems and took out life insurance policies on Cooper.
They had two policies on Cooper. The first policy was a $2,000 policy through the Home Depot.
Now, the second one, was this something that they got back in 2013?
Yes, November 2012 is when he signed up for it.
Okay. And was this something that he still had at the time of the child's death?
That is correct.
And how much was the policy?
It was a $25,000 policy.
Stoddard laid out the strange way he saw Harris reacting the day Cooper died.
He started off trying to work himself up, and we're watching him on the camera as he's doing this, and he's walking around and he's rubbing his eyes, and he's, it looked like he's trying to hyperventilate himself. No tears, no, real emotion coming out of him except for, the huffing.
And through the time you're talking with him about his son and his son's death, did you ever see any tears coming from him?
No.
Even more bizarre, how witnesses say Leanna Harris reacted at the daycare when she was told that Cooper was never dropped off.
And in front of several witnesses, all of a sudden she states, Ross must have left him in the car. And they're like, what? There's no other reason. No other explanation, Ross must have left him in the car. And they try to console her, and they're like, no, there's 1,000 reasons. There, he could have taken him to lunch or something. We don't know yet. And she's like, no.
Then another shocker.
Were there any injuries to the child's face?
There were.
And what were those?
The way it's explained, there were several marks on the child's face. It would have come from the child or a scratch being made while the child was alive, and then not healing, not scabbing over or anything like that, and just soon after he passed away.
Were there any injuries to the child back of the child's head?
Yes, there were abrasions to the back of the child's head.
After 3 hours of stunning testimony, Judge Frank Cox denied Harris bond, the defense maintaining.
It's not criminal negligence. It's a horrible tragedy and an accident.
With jihadi militants making significant advances in Iraq, Saudi Arabia has started moving military personnel close to its frontier with the war-torn country. The reports come after Iraqi troops were reported to be withdrawing from the area, something Baghdad denies. Gianni Chikian has the details.
Saudi Arabia has reportedly sent 30,000 troops to its border with Iraq. Across that border is a cauldron of sectarian infighting. The ISIS is Sunni. It's a radical Sunni jihadist army, well-armed and well-funded. Saudi Arabia, also Sunni, doesn't want to be officially associated with the ISIS, but it's hardly an innocent bystander. Many of the ISIS's most violent frontline fighters are believed to be Saudi nationals. There are widespread reports that wealthy donors in Saudi Arabia had been funding the ISIS throughout their fight in Syria and beyond. Riyadh may now say that it has nothing to do with the rise of this radical group, that it itself is threatened by it. But experts believe Saudi Arabia has helped create the force in ways more than just providing funding and fighters.
They need also to think in the ideology that created ISIS. And I think the Wahhabi regime in Saudi Arabia needs to realize that a lot of their teaching contributed to the creation of ISIS.
Just in the span of several years, bolstered by the fight against Assad in Syria, the ISIS has advanced so far as to declare an Islamic caliphate across the territories that it now controls, both in Iraq and in Syria. The question is whether Saudi Arabia sees the ISIS as a serious threat. It has warned against foreign military interference in Iraq, and now Iran is reportedly sending fighter jets to help the Iraqi government fight the jihadist army. Will Saudi Arabia sit still? Lots of questions. One thing is clear, the cauldron of sectarian tensions is only getting more explosive.
إننا نشتم رائحة الغدر والتصعيد على شعبنا من هذا المحتل الجبان، وهذا يتطلب من مجاهدينا ورجال المقاومة وجميع أبناء شعبنا الحذر والاستعداد، ونحن بدورنا جاهزون لكل الاحتمالات. وإن التهديدات التي يطلقها العدو والتلويح بالحرب ضد غزة هي تهديدات لا تعني في قاموسنا سوى اقتراب ساعة الانتقام من العدو.
One young man was dressed in a camouflage uniform and wearing a jacket with a cap on his head, and the other one was wearing dark clothes and had black hair. The young man had a bag. When he heard the shooting, my son said it was not the sound of Kalashnikovs, but of old automatic guns, like a PM gun, not a big one.
The Foreign Ministry confirms that a Vietnamese fishing ship with 6 sailors on board had been detained by the Chinese Coast Guard. A spokesman for the Foreign Ministry says that the seizure took place in Chinese territorial waters, 7 nautical miles to the south of the city of Sanya, where the Vietnamese vessel was said to be operating illegally. Chinese authorities are investigating that incident. A spokesman also asked Vietnam to take the necessary measures to strengthen discipline and education to its fishermen to help prevent similar incidents from happening in the future.
Melissa McCarthy is set to take the 4th of July weekend by storm with her latest outrageous comedy, Tammy. I'm Topher Roger, and your Red Carpet Report starts right now. I was hearing that Tammy came from a fever dream one night.
Yeah. Yes, apparently he goes and has really strange dreams about alcoholic grandmothers, and it's working out great for us.
How about a beer?
No.
Whiskey?
No.
Oh my God. You're pregnant.
There's probably a little bit of Tammy in all of us, which sounds, I know, weird, but yeah, there's that kind of person who's, you know, sort of waiting for something good to happen. You know what I mean?
You are at least 40 seconds fired, so please exit the Topper Jacks.
Tammy's, you know, Tammy's got some problems. I think this is all of it.
Get over there. Go. Don't walk right toward the gun.
Sorry.
Put pies in there. Put them in. Don't creep up on me like that. Everybody's got that thing where, oh God, it's like you're your own worst nightmare. You know what to do in your mind, but it doesn't mean you do it. It doesn't mean you make the best choices.
In Presidio, Texas.